Welcome to another episode of Sisters in Conversation. I'm your host, Tebelo Motshwane. I'm an attorney by profession and the founder of a platform called Sister in Law, which is a platform dedicated to empowering women through legal education. On today's episode, I'm joined by Zwonaka Netshifulani. Hi, Zwonaka.
Hi, Tebelo. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks. And yourself. I'm just gonna, go through your bio, let everybody know what you're about, and then we're gonna get straight into our conversation for the day.
I will do the preacher pose.
Perfect. Zwonaka is a lawyer and a researcher living in Johannesburg. She obtained her LLB from Wits University. Her work includes stints at the Constitutional Court and the State Capture Commission. Her current research focus is on ethics, business conduct, and corporate governance in the private sector. On a personal front, she's the firstborn of four children, and she thinks her siblings are the best humans ever. Yeah, I'll get back to that one. She loves reading, sleeping, vintage clothes, shopping, and cooking in that order. After her studies, Zwonaka spent a year as an intern at the office of the COO of the South African Human Rights Commission, two and a
Mhm.
half years as a candidate attorney at Social Justice Research and Litigation NGO, SERI-SA, a year as a research clerk at the Constitutional Court to then um, Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, and then 4 years as a researcher and speechwriter at the State Capture Commission. Shoo. Welcome to the show. Zoya. It's so lovely to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us today and just
And
share insights on your journey, very colorful journey. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for finally saying yes. I mean, you had not said no before.
Yeah, but it took a minute to.
I took it for
Dinedibo
comment
Washam. It wasn't on purpose.
and I
Dinedibo wa.
said, when the time is ready.
The Lord will make it happen. Come on now.
You know what, you just have to keep trying sometimes because yes, life does get in the way. But
Yeah.
like I said to you, if you don't say no, it doesn't mean it's a no. It just means
Yeah.
try again next time. So I'm glad we finally have you on the show. I know
Yeah.
you've got some invaluable insights to share with us.
I will definitely try. I will definitely try. I hope they're invaluable. I'll definitely
Perfect. All right, let's take it back to the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about Zwonaka as a child. Where did you grow up? Where were you born? Primary school, high school you attended, and what was your childhood life like?
So I was born in Thoyando in Muvenda. My father in Muvenda, my mother Kimulobedu. She speaks a dialect of Shipedi called Kilobedu. And I spent the first 4 years of my life in Thoyando, first 4 or 3 years of my life in Thoyando. And then because my father's a pastor, he got transferred quite a bit by the church. And we landed up in the East Strand, Tembisa, Kempton Park,
Mm-hmm.
Wanakokasi for
Yeah.
most of my early life. And then I think we had a very short time in the burbs, like Kempton Park. And then I did grade one. Then the year I started grade one to grade four, we lived in a township called Guatema in Springs on the East Strand.
Mm-hmm.
That was home. The Slally Peace, rest in peace. That was the name of the suburb. I mean, the neighborhood rather. Very weird name for a neighborhood, but
I
anyways.
was gonna
Uh,
say, okay, interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right.
yeah,
So you called
yeah,
it
no, it
peace.
was,
It was
yeah,
just too
no,
much
it was,
explaining the
yeah,
rest in
I was just like, yeah, I go peace, can I go peace?
yeah.
Yeah, or rest in peace. And yeah, and by the time we lived in when that by the time I did grade one, my younger sister had been born, my younger brother had been born, so there were three of us, with my
Mhm.
parents and my aunts, and life was full of family, very busy, um, but I was also a very quiet, very shy kid in school. So I didn't
Mhm.
really interact with a lot of the other children. I discovered reading very early on as a way to escape. Lots of bullying. Not even, yeah, bullying and isolation, because it's this
Hmm.
weird, and the kid also going to Zulu, how we stana, how
Ah,
we,
yes, yes.
you know. and you look a little weird and you're a little bit darker and you eat food that's a little bit to what the kids are used to and all those types of things. So first couple of years, grade 1 to grade 6 of primary school, absolutely horrible. I did grade 5 and 6 in Kimberley in the Northern Cape, again, because of a transfer. Came back and did grade 7 in Springs, Southcourt Primary School, greatest primary school in the world. And then I did my matric at Springs Girls High. High school, from grade 8 to matric at Springs Girls High. And pretty much the same kid all throughout. Really loved reading. Really got stuck into fiction. I could read, I think, at some point I was doing 200 pages a day, which had a horrible impact on my schoolwork. But listen, it could have been drugs. So I feel like my parents should be grateful.
It could have been worse. It could have been worse.
So yeah. But yeah, man, that's pretty much it. Just at school, very shy, very solitary, but loved reading, loved books, loved Shakespeare, loved drama, loved literature, hated mathematics or anything that required counting, which is probably why I became a lawyer eventually. But yeah, that was high school. And then when I turned 16, my youngest brother was born. He's the baby of the family, coolest kid you'll ever meet, happiest, coolest teenager. Really life-changing experience as well. And yeah, then varsity, Wits University for 5 years. And then the rest, she's history.
I mean, you speak about like a lot of transfers because of, your dad being a priest. Did that maybe also lead to you sort of being isolated and finding it maybe difficult to make friends because you're here for 2 years, there for 4 years, back for 4 years. So that instability, obviously, you can't really build friendships, and especially back then, it's not like we could just connect on Facebook or exchange numbers and speak on WhatsApp or whatever the case was.
No, absolutely. And how when you get to a place, people already have social networks and relationships that they've been building for years. So you're always the new kid. So yeah, that was pretty tricky. But I think it worked out kind of the older I got, because you learn to at least have friendly relations, if not friendships, but friendly relations with everybody around without it having to be this really deep, hectic thing, You can greet Obofeta, and just keep it moving. So ups and downs,
Also, the older we get, we just don't take things personally as much. Like, you're not necessarily sad that you're not making friends or whatever the case is. You just sort of learn to cope through all those kind of challenges, and you just don't take things as personally as you would have if you're in grade 3, grade 4.
Yeah, grade 3, grade 4, I took it very personally. It was extremely difficult. Because I didn't understand why the other kids didn't like me, why I didn't have friends and things like that. But yeah, now you realize that, you don't have to be friends with everybody in everybody's business all the time. Sometimes being by yourself is the healthiest thing you can do.
Also, like, I think primary was also just very, difficult, even with, people who are stable. In primary, we all just looked like boys. It was a confusing time in our lives, okay?
No, listen.
It mustn't be so hard on
ourselves. If not deliberate about making you girly, it was bad. It was bad. We looked crusty.
We all just looked like 10-year-old boys. So like, we really shouldn't be too hard on ourselves on the fact that primary school didn't go well. Like,
honestly, I'd never thought of it that way, but I think you're right. I am.
Yeah. So, you then went to Wits to pursue law. What influenced your decision to study law? I mean, you did mention that you just didn't like numbers and accounting, but was there anybody in your family who was a lawyer, an uncle, an aunt? Were you interested in a particular TV series where there were lawyers and you're like, this is a profession I want to pursue? Can you tell us a little bit about that and then maybe share your campus experience with us?
I mean, not even. So my dad started a law degree, and then I think he was called into ministry, so he left that and became a pastor. But over and above, there were no lawyers in my immediate vicinity. I think my parents are in many ways, kind of first generation graduate, and things of that nature. So they were the template, they were the blueprint. So my father's a theologian. They both went to study on postgrad. My mother has a master's in basic education, my father in applied ethics. So they both loved to read. They were both very curious about analysis, the way that the world works. So I grew up around books. I grew up around debate. I grew up around argument. And so I was used to that constant kind of application of your mind to, but is this the actual state of the world? Is this actually relevant? Is this where we're really at? And law just felt like it made sense. I was like, I want to be rich. I want to have money, but I don't want to do math.
I love that. And how's that going?
You know what? The money hasn't come to where I thought it would yet. But
I'm just like, oh, where did we get that from? Because the way things are set up right now, like I know I also was like, I want to be rich, but guys, come on, like.
Machankura Hasofit. Mara, they're not. It's not where I thought it. I was sure. I was like, I'm gonna be in an AMG. I'm gonna be living in Parkhurst.
Yay! That's why I was just like, okay, and how's that going? Because
no. It's
where
not. It's
I'm
not.
standing,
I mean, very well paid. Obviously, can't complain. But it's not. It's not there. Not there.
Yeah. Look, the legal profession has really made a good name for itself, because at least on the outside, it looks like we could just get into it and be rich. Made a good name for itself in that regard.
Yeah, but people also just look at us and they see objection and they think that's the 411. It's not. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it looks like such a jump from the outside.
Yeah. But share a little bit of your varsity experience with us. I did say earlier with, Wits giving you the age. What was your campus life like? Were you staying at Ray's? Were you part of what do they call the societies? Yeah, were you part of societies, or were you just that girl who putting your head down and just doing the work, going home afterwards?
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I think university was eye-opening for me because of how much it expanded my social circle. So I met and encountered and interacted with personalities that I was meeting for the first time. I think I even remember the first time I heard like Chishona, next to me. I'd never heard of it before, but I knew I'd grown up around Shona speaking and, Ndebele speaking people, or people who are originally from Zim. You're meeting people from all of these different cultures and places. So I think it took me a minute to kind of adapt to the range of personalities on campus. I lived in a women's only Christian res something. It used to be the YWCA. It's in Bromfontein, just at the end of Versick Street, almost adjacent to what is that place called? The City of Joburg, that big green hall. And it was a very strict environment, only girls, no gents allowed beyond the ground floor. There were church services on Thursdays. My mom did very well. I don't know how she found it, but they had me under lockdown for like the first 3 years.
But wasn't it similar to like your high school life?
It was, because the kind of the values and the strictness was very similar. You go to school, you come back home. So it was very similar in that regard. School was a lot. The work was a lot. Yeah, but I loved being on campus. I loved being around other people. I liked telling everybody that I was at law school. It sounded so hectic. I learned how to make noodles, I think 15 different ways, I'm sure.
Did you make noodles and cut up Vienna the one time?
No, so our thing was making noodles and then making them spicy with like, my best friend is Nigerian. One of my best friends is Nigerian. So she'd make like stew, like jollof stew, that spicy tomato stew, and would have toast. Like, if you gave us that, we were on top of the world. Like, we were bowling out of control. Like, we were good. Like, we were good. Or you get like a 35 rand plate of jollof rice with like turkey and coleslaw. And if you're lucky, you get plantain as well. And because West Africans are like bapedi, they dish like it's the last thing you're going to eat. So we would eat for like 3 days on this one container. So yeah, man, like we really learned how to do. You're like noodles, those are our things. Noodles and toast.
Noodles and Vienna, hey, like whenever I was spoiling myself, I'd cut up the Vienna, then add it there, then you've just got noodles with a twist. To this day, I don't want to see Viennas, I don't want to see noodles. Get sharp.
Girl, my siblings love them. I think I've eaten them twice in the time since I left school. Because I'm just like,
it's giving Pavo.
Yeah, let's just also not do it again. Let's just never do it. We did it. Let's just not do it again. It's enough. It's enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty much varsity. It took me 5 years instead of 4, because I failed 2 core courses, delict and crim. Delict, which was a lot more complex than I thought it was at the beginning, because wrongfulness named Abola. And then in crim, contemporaneity principle.
I don't even remember that.
It's that your intention and the conduct must happen at the same time. Otherwise, or something along those lines. Oh, the way I lost, like, I still remember losing like 20 marks. It hurt so bad.
I'm so happy you shared that with us, because I was gonna ask what are one of the moments, good or bad, that stand out to you at varsity. Clearly failing those 2 modules and those specific 20 marks.
I even remember the lecturer, she was like, no, you guys didn't answer contemporaneity. I was like, what do you I had to do it again, did it again, and that took 5 years. But I was devastated. I remember I called my mom in tears. She was like, don't be sad. I'm like, I've never failed anything in my life. Like, I wasn't a student, but failure.
And then that's
to the point. Yeah, I would repeat that.
No, that's just the beginning. Like, you know, when you fail in varsity and you're devastated, and then now where I am in life, and I realized that I wasted my devastation because it got worse.
Like, it hadn't even started. There were still boards coming.
I wasted my devastation. I should have just calmed down. And I remember there was actually a time where my mom was like, one day nobody's gonna care that you failed these modules in varsity. Like,
it feels like the end of the world.
Your life is still gonna go downhill. Even like with your first heartbreak, your parents are like, calm down. Boys are still gonna break your heart. You're like, nah. Hey.
Hey, and they did, my boy.
It gets worse.
No, but I don't want to lie. Criminal law and delict, they broke my heart first. By tabots, they were just like, the 5 years instead of 4.
That was just the beginning. That was just the beginning. Yo.
I can't do. More is coming. More is coming. It's the more.
What did you do during that year where you just had 2 modules? Were you like working? Were you in retail doing promotions? Or were you just trying to focus on fighting for your life to, you know, get those 2 modules out of the way so you could graduate?
Oh no, so the Wits, I don't remember how it was set up, but the way it was set up, I was able to do some of my 3rd year courses, like criminal procedure, evidence, etc., together with repeating crim and delict. So I still had a full kind of course complement, but because now crim and delict clash with some of my 3rd year courses, the compulsory ones, I couldn't take those. But yeah, I still had subjects that I was doing in 3rd year, then 4th, and then I can't remember what I was doing in 5th. I think I had a fairly light course load in 5th, but yeah, 4th year. So it kept going. It kept going. Then I think I filled it up with electives and things like that. I tried to find work. I really did. But it just didn't come together. I think Kilega Rexali airtime at some point. Yeah, I sold airtime, I think.
Those people that used to add 1 rand to the airtime, like if they're 12, you sell it for 13. Yo, guys.
For sure.
Okay.
Five rand was 5 rand 50.
Yo.
And then Oxalayo, people paid. I was like, this is my pocket money
We were
for the week.
desperate. And I then
Yeah,
came
no, because
to learn that there was no need for you guys to put a markup because you'd still get it discounted from the like airtime supplier. So I don't know,
yeah,
guys. You scammed us. You scammed us.
capitalism, guys, it's capitalism. It's capitalism. It was before we became radical. We are better
Yeah,
people
yeah.
now. We're better people.
Okay, and then you graduate, and how do you know by the time you graduate that you want to take the course of becoming an attorney? Or wait, did you become a researcher first after graduating?
So after grad, I went to UKZN to do a master's in human rights.
Mm-hmm.
I dropped out eventually, but I started. And so when I went to the Human Rights Commission after my first year at
Why did you
UKZN,
drop out?
oh, hmm?
Why did you drop out?
I think it was a mix of things. One was time. I've never worked like chilled jobs. I've never worked like a clean 9 to 5. It's always 8 to something. So time was a little difficult. That was one thing. Two, supervisor issues. There was a lot of shuffling in and out. I wasn't really sure what was going on. Yeah, and then like she was
So
like, no, continue.
were you
So
trying to pursue were you trying to pursue your master's at the same time that you were working at the Human Rights Commission?
so I started my LLM as a full-time student. And then during my time in LLM, not knowing that I would have to come back the following year to finish my dissertation because it wasn't done. I thought it was done. I thought I'd submitted and it was finished. Kanti was going to come back with revisions. I applied to the Human Rights Commission and I got in. And then when I got in, they were like, hey, yo, you still have your dissertation, but I could do that from Johannesburg, which was fine. So I just continued with it from there.
And can you recall what exactly it was that made you fall in love with, human rights and wanting to work for the Human Rights Commission? How did you
Absolutely.
get that job? How did you apply? For someone who's listening and they're like, what? I didn't know a Human Rights Commission exists. How do we get into that? Can you please just tell us a little bit about that journey?
So with the Human Rights Commission, I got really lucky. The then COO at the time came to give a career talk at church because she was based in Bloemfontein at the time. And she came to give a career talk. She actually happened to be renting the house she lived in from the church. So the church buys property for its departmental directors or its pastors or whatever. And that particular house was vacant, so she rented from the church. So she knew our pastors. And so I went to a youth convention in Bloem, and she was speaking there about a bunch of things, but also primarily about the Human Rights Commission, what had led her to do that. And so I spoke to her there. She was like, hey, here's my business card. When you're done with school, give me a call and let's see if you're a proper fit for the Human Rights Commission. But in my final year at Wits, I had a lecturer called Professor Bonita Meyersfeld. I think she's advocate now. Professor Bonita Meyersfeld, who taught us public international law. And I think outside of jurisprudence, which is the philosophy of law, nothing set me on fire more than public international law. I loved the idea of human rights. I loved the idea of, this international community and this development of the human rights of everybody and how all of these bodies came to be, et cetera, et cetera. It mixed my love of the law, my love for justice and fairness, and also, my love for history. It also felt, because that was very up at the top most part of my mind, it also felt like the best way to be a Christian and a lawyer. The best way to be in law and to serve the Lord was to be a person who worked really hard for the attainment of justice for others. So in that class for those 6 months, and then the following year, I meet the COO when she's coming to give that career talk, and everything just kind of clicks. I come back to Johannesburg after a lot of back and forth and no, I'm not ready. And what if she thinks I'm stupid? Because imposter syndrome, tabula, even when you're too young to have it.
Yeah.
But, I eventually reached out and I said, hi, we met last year, etc., etc. I was wondering if if there was still any space in the Human Rights Commission. She was like, yeah, come through. And I came through. I went with a copy of my draft dissertation because she wanted to see how I wrote. And I think an essay or a paper that I'd written for politics and law, I think, one of my courses, which was taught by Max Duplessis, who is currently at the ICC arguing the Israel case. So I was very proud to see him there. And yeah, she read it. She asked me a couple of questions. Like it wasn't like a full-on interview. It was my first one, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. But it was a full-on interview. She was like, what do you expect from this job? What do you do? What are your values? What are your ethics? What do you understand about the commission? And I had over-prepared because I was like, I'm going to get this big. And yeah, the rest is history. Year in her office.
And what were the typical duties and the typical cases that you were dealing with during that year?
Because she was the COO, she was trying to streamline operations and to make them better. And one of the core things that she was really concerned about was ensuring consistent quality across the reports. So whenever somebody goes to the Human Rights Commission with a complaint, you walk into a provincial office and you say, so-and-so has violated my human rights. There's an investigation. There are inspections and all those such things by human rights officers in province. And then they write up what their findings are and what their remedial action proposals, recommendations are. And there wasn't any consistency about how those reports appeared. There was no structure. You know, IPAC in varsity, they teach you issue, application, conclusion. Yeah, there wasn't any kind of that. So it made it very difficult to follow. So just getting editorial quality up, but also creating a database so that if anybody ever wanted to access those reports later on, they knew where to be able to get them. So that was the massive focus for her that year. But I also did a whole bunch of other things, research and other projects within the commission, with stakeholders outside the commission as well. I designed access cards, I remember, which is a very random project, but it was a lot of fun. And then, yeah, that was pretty much my year. A lot of writing, a lot of editing, a lot of research, a couple of very weird, cool projects, and a lot of operational and admin support as well. You know, if you went on a strategic retreat, somebody's going to lose like 50 of their files, and they're going to look for the 22-year-old to come and extract them from their computer. I don't know how, but
yeah.
So that was me for that year. That was me for that year.
Okay, all right, lovely. Thank you so much. And what do you think, you know, looking back, would be the 3 or 4 qualities that you think a human rights officer or a student that's listening now would need to have to, you know, sort of work at the Human Rights Commission? Just the 3 or 4 qualities.
I think one, a genuine care for people. The work is not as easy as it looks from the outside, and the violations that people come in with are serious, but they're also a lot. Some of them are not really something that fall within your purview, so you need to really care about people to be able to deal with all of that on a day-to-day basis, if you're going to be working at that level, particularly provincially. Really good with people also as your colleagues in and around. 2, you need to have a very liberal mindset. You cannot be a hyper-conservative person working in a Chapter 9 institution that exists to protect human rights in a liberal society with liberal values. And then you all of a sudden have like religious objections to queer people, or religious objections to abortion, or whatever the case might be. So you need to align yourself with the values of the Constitution and actually believe that all people have a right to safety and security of the person, etc., etc. Because it's very difficult also to investigate something on someone's behalf when you don't actually care that the violation happened to them. That's and then 3, I think the same things that are required of any lawyer or researcher, which is speed and an attention to detail. You need to work quickly, but you need to watch what you're working on. have an attention to detail. So if you're in law school right now, there's this course that they teach you, which is research methodologies or research something, where they teach you how to use juta and Boolean operators. That thing is underrated. You need, please pay attention. Don't do what I did. Please pay attention. It'll save you hours in research. Hours. Legislation judicially considered is my best friend. It'll save you hours.
A little bit, it does get a little bit exhausting sometimes. And you know, when you get a candidate attorney or a student, well, basically, with a legal background, and they come into the office, you don't expect them to like know the law, right? You just expect them to have their varsity. But things like grammar and how to research and how to find information, you expect them to know how to find information. So if you cannot find information,
it's tricky.
How am I going to get you to knowing the law? Because I'm not expecting you to know the law. I'm expecting you to be able to find the answers.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Or at least where to start. Be like, I searched under the legislation judicially considered. I searched under the appellate division. I searched by judge. I searched by court. I searched by case. The information is not there. It doesn't look like there's any precedent. But if someone does not and how to navigate case annotations on LexisNexis or Juta, hey, you're going to live a difficult life. Please pay attention in the research module. The tutorials are boring, but they will save your life. They will save your life.
There were so many things that were, you know, really boring in varsity. But nothing is for nothing. It catches up with you.
Yep.
Wrongfulness will catch up with you.
At the time you least expected, you will miss an element and then your client's case is thrown out and it's your fault.
We even see in interviews with the Plascon Evans rules catch up with you in your adult life.
And Ulumatuna at the Judicial Service Commission, like you're old.
Oh, we're in the ghetto here.
Yeah, no, but it is what it is. It is what it is. But yeah, definitely please take that research class seriously.
And then did that then pour into your next move of your stint at the Constitutional Court?
Definitely. I think the important thing for me was that I wasn't academically gifted. So I had to demonstrate qualities outside of book smarts. And that was a willingness to work really hard, but also to get myself into spaces that served as the next step and the next step and the next step. So I thought, starting a master's makes you more attractive to the job market, and at least gets you into internships in the places where you want to go, especially if you want to do something in human rights, and then once you're at the Human Rights Commission, at least then you have some time and you have some experience. And so when you start applying, you are not green and brand new and out of school. And so when I applied to do articles, I had that behind me. And I knew that ultimately I wanted to go to the Constitutional Court. And this is the other thing, because I remember in final year, I had actually prayed about it. I had said to the Lord, look, please, I want to do a master's. I would like to do my articles. And then I would like to go to the Constitutional Court. I don't know how in order those things work because I didn't fully understand the legal world at the time. But I was like, please, Lord, I want these things to happen. And God was faithful. And it happened exactly in that order. So when I got to SERI, bust my behind for those 2.5 years. I wasn't the greatest CA, I will admit it, because I don't want my former boss to see this and be like,
oh, so at SERI, you did your articles. You can do your articles there. I like that kind of information because I wouldn't have thought that I love that. Okay.
Did work very much in human rights, and it was during Fees Must Fall, so we also got a lot of litigation experience. Well, not litigation, but advocacy experience, because we were moving a lot of bill applications, a lot of client consultations, and things of that nature. Very involved in strategic litigation as well, so that was really great. Enhanced research, enhanced drafting, enhanced writing. It was great. I do have some regrets about how fully I took advantage of the opportunity. But yeah, it was 2.5 years there was pretty incredible. I had really amazing bosses, really good supervisors. And then that gave me the step I needed to be able to finally get into the Constitutional Court, because now I had the socioeconomic rights experience, applying those rights or the Bill of Rights, or more specifically socioeconomic rights, my day-to-day cases. And I worked for an organization that had itself made a lot of really incredible or amazing, what do you call it, precedent in human rights jurisprudence as well. So it had a very good name as an organization. And yeah, that's how I got.
I love that. So you mentioned how you have regrets that you didn't use that opportunity fully. What would you have done differently?
I think I would have applied myself a lot more. But I also think very little kind of prepares you, and especially at that time, I think the programs have gotten better now. But I think very little prepared you truly for the world of work. But there was also and what I've now realized now in my 30s, sorry, my siblings are with me. What I've realized now in my 30s, there was very little long-term planning or guidance on how to long-term plan your career. And then once you're able to kind of long-term plan your career, then you're able to identify which gaps you have in your current skill set and then work to fill those. And so for me, the ultimate gap was Concord. But beyond that, I wasn't really sure what would follow, what would come after that. And so I couldn't also insert myself and be like, you know what, thank you very much. I've spent 6 months in the housing rotation. I'd like to spend 6 months in research now. Well, thanks very much for the research. I spent 6 months there. I would really like to go back to inner city housing or the right to work or whatever. So even advocating myself in the kind of cases that I wanted to work on or be involved in, or an awareness of how all of these things kind of connected and worked together, not just as a candidate attorney in that moment, but as a lawyer for the long term. Definitely didn't take full advantage of it then. And I think if I had known what I know now, I would have been more aggressive, in wanting assignments, in wanting to write more, in wanting to draft more, wanting to appear in court more. I wish I had done that.
I love that, because just through this conversation, you've now just, possibly equipped the next person to take advantage of that position if they find themselves, doing their articles at SERI. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Sure. So beautiful. Earlier on, you mentioned something about imposter syndrome and how you did not, obviously you didn't think you were qualified for working at the Human Rights Commission. How did that, how did those feelings of inadequacy become bearable over time as you progressed to SERI, from SERI to Concord, and, even today in your career? How do you keep reminding yourself that you are the business, you are the shizness?
I think a part of it is a very malicious part, a very sassy part. But imposter syndrome is essentially the idea that you're the odd one out, like you're the one that doesn't belong in the room. And then you sit in the room and you talk to the people who are in the room and you realize they're not that smart. So maybe you should stop being so shy. Because if you made it here, so can I. I think Michelle Obama said it this. They were like, how do you...
Mike. He drops Mike, like, you're done.
Like, sometimes
you're sitting in the room and you're like, okay.
You're just like, why are you earning the big bucks? That's not right.
I love that.
You watch a couple of senior advocates get confused about the requirements for an interdict, and then you're like,
You're like, my guy.
You know what? Maybe it ain't that hard.
I absolutely love that. That's the best answer. That's the best answer.
I think I heard it from Michelle Obama. She was like, how do you deal with being in these big rooms with these big men. And she's like, you get into the rooms and you realize very quickly that they are not.
I think she speaks about it in the Becoming
book.
documentary.
Yes.
The Netflix documentary. She says something along those lines, and you just like, and it finally clicks on actually, I deserve to be here. Yeah.
But then the second one was more kind of socially conscious, which is an awareness that a lot of these I am an imposter. The system was not designed for me. It was never intended that I should be there. When these systems were developed, they never intended a woman to be a lawyer. They never intended a woman to be in court. They never intended women to be jurists. And they never intended a Black woman to be a jurist. So I am an imposter. So the system does not want me here. You know, so coming to terms with it and being like, oh, halemba at least, or mara. Yes, you also can't make decisions and strategic litigation decisions about the communities I live in without asking me, like, why are you the expert of my experience and my struggle? Which is something that SERI taught me very well, that you are not the ultimate decider of what your clients need. Your clients are the experts in their experiences. You amplify, you make room, you use your privilege, your voice, your robes, your Wits English, and you make space for them to be able to speak to their own solutions. They know better than you ever possibly could, no matter how much sociology, anthropology you studied. They know what they're going through. They know how to deal with it, you know? And so just humility as well, that one, you're not expected to have all the answers. You are an imposter. The system was not made for you. It doesn't want you there. And it is still confused at why you are here and what you want with it. But also understanding that you're not supposed to have all the answers anyways. You know? You're not supposed to. And the ones who pretend like they do.
Mamaka. And it goes back to saying we just need to know how to find the answers. We don't have to know the answers. As
long as you can find, if you can use a Boolean operator, you'll be fine. If you can use those apostrophes and say and or exclude.
I love that. Another guest of mine was also saying that over the years she just learned to read. We have the same qualifications, guys. We wrote the same board exams. So she just stopped feeling intimidated in spaces because she was like, oh, Nali Duplessis, the same exam. So if Lena Ukamo, I deserve to be in this
even
room.
Me, I deserve, yes.
Wrote the same exam. We were all dying there.
Precisely. And I wrote it without having any lawyers in my family. I wrote it encountering all these things for the first time. I wrote it Ginga taxi every day into town, whereas others were being driven to the office. Their parents and their parents were advocates. Their uncles were judges. So you must have a little bit of attitude, like just a little bit, maybe a lot.
We must just give ourselves a break sometimes. Hey, like
it's hard, this thing, and we did it against a lot of odds. We really did. And then you get into the room with people whose parents created environments for them, right? And you got to give them props. And whose parents did the work. But, you know, my parents didn't have access to those things. My mother's the first university graduate of her family. You know, my father's his family. How on earth are they supposed to know the difference between a solicitor and a barrister and a king's counsel and a queen's counsel and all those types of things? And they still have a lawyer daughter. So, Oscar Papel.
Sure. I love that. Tell us a little bit about your time at Concord. What are some of the maybe take us back to the day of your interview. Does anything stand out from your interview, the application process?
The application process is very difficult, is very rigorous, but luckily at SERI, I had 2 colleagues, if not 3 colleagues, who had already gone through the process and had clerked or were on their way to. So they gave me quite a lot of feedback and guidance and support to hone my application and get it together. It was my 3rd time applying to the Concord, my first time getting an interview. And I got 3 interviews. I got an interview with Justice Zondo, an interview with Justice Khampepe, and an interview with Justice Mhlanhla. With Justice Mhlanhla. So I was extremely excited. I wore a navy blue and green blazer and a little like schoolgirl outfit with my tie up to here, and I wear stockings because I was told that one of the judges is very formal and she likes stockings and you must look neat and presentable. And then I also spoke to the colleagues, and this is one thing that helps you. Each of the judges care about very different things. You know, others care about writing, others care about reading, others care about research, others just need the additional admin support. Like they've got their thing down, they're fine, they're sorted, they're very confident in what they're doing. They just need the extra capacity that comes with being a clerk. And so you speak to people who have clerked before and you ask them, I'm interviewing with this judge. What should I prepare for? Because Madlanga doesn't interview the same way as Nkabinde, as Mokoro, may so rest in peace, as Zondo, as Jafta. They all have different ways of approaching the law and they all want different things from their clerks. So it's really, really important to speak to former clerks and ask them what their experience was like, both interviewing and in court once they got into the role. The Concord was very work heavy. My clerkship started after the court got its expanded powers. So it was now dealing with all matters of appeal, not just constitutional matters. So the caseload was fairly heavy. And your responsibilities as a clerk are to receive the new applications, to research them, whether they should be set down or dismissed or whatever the case might be, or a short judgment. So you read an incredible amount. You researched an incredible amount. You argued with your judge an incredible amount. He would be like, no, we're not setting this down. Like, no, but you have to set it down. You know, you lobbied other clerks quite a bit to be like, no, you have to convince your judge to set this down. Come on, we're going to set precedent in 1, 2, 3, 4, and all of that. There was a lot of also like sharing of ideas. We would have seminars on cases where everyone would have a separate research question and you would have to answer the specific one. I remember when we were doing, for example, the cannabis judgment. And we were thinking, we were wondering if privacy was a way to provide for the right to be able to use cannabis for religious reasons, you know. So one chamber was asked, please give us arguments on cannabis. Then another chamber would be asked for comparative jurisprudence. Other countries have legalized it. How have they done it? So there was that constant kind of research and back and forth. And then there were your clerks committees. Clerks give tours to visiting judges and dignitaries around the entire Constitution Hill campus and the court. So if a judge from the 8th Circuit in Wisconsin happened to come and visit, a clerk would be one to show them around and give them tours. We spoke to students who came in on tours and who wanted questions or who had questions about how the court worked. We interacted as well with the legal professionals that came in to argue, your advocates and your attorneys. You would be the one who goes in and takes them to meet for the presiding officer, the Chief Justice or the Deputy Chief Justice. You would go and fetch your advocates, take them in to meet the presiding officer ahead of the hearing. They would have their little pre-hearing discussion and then you would take them back down. So it was a mix of those admin and substantive and debate, research intensive types of things for that year. The workload was crazy. We regularly worked really, really long hours, often came in over weekends as well. You develop an incredible attention for detail. You read a lot, you edit a lot, you site check a lot. The law you don't know you're supposed to find, even that law you're going to find it because you must make sure that it exists in the first place. You pay a lot of attention in hearings as well. What is being said? Did this advocate actually say that? Or did he say that?
Always on. You are always on. You're always
never
on.
never ever off. Whether you're on term or in recess, same thing. The work just never ever stopped. The work never ever stopped. So that was the year at the Concord. When we left, we were all like, thanks. It's been real. We are not coming back.
Thank you so much for a detailed description of what to expect, what to anticipate, and just sharing your journey with us. Um, yeah, in such a colorful way because I wasn't there, but I'm exhausted from everything you've shared because
Yeah,
I'm
no, it
just
was tiring. It was tiring.
did
No,
you
when
have
June came, I
24
was like,
hours to do this? Like when did you do all of this? Like
no,
I
crazy.
mean,
It
I
was
know
absolutely.
as a child in primary school, you were reading 200 pages a day, but geez, yeah,
It's different when it's the law because now you must
yeah,
focus. Like, okay, what
yeah.
is actually the no. When June 2018 came, I was like, thank you very much. Ompone ompolai.
Thanks, but no thanks.
It's been yeah, it has been real. It has been real. The money was very nice,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
let's not do that again.
I want you to share with us like one of obviously the best moments that stand out to you. But before that, I want to touch on how earlier, just before you shared your journey at Concord with us, you spoke about how you applied 3 times. Now, firstly, what made you go back the third time? And when you finally got the interview, did you see why the first and second time didn't work out? Were you like, yo, do you recall having that moment, that aha moment where you're like, oh, okay, I'm now letting go of the disappointment from the first and the second time, and I finally understand why it didn't
Mm.
work out.
Well, I think the first and second time my self-esteem, the imposter syndrome was so low that I wasn't surprised that they didn't answer. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. But the third time when I did, the reason why I applied again and again is because I really wanted it. I wanted to clerk there, and I wanted the capital, the social capital that came, the social and professional capital that came with having clerked there. The networks you form there are networks I still have to this day. Um, I, and I understood one, that the skills required at the Constitutional Court, the hours, the work ethic, and the patience required are things that I could not have developed anywhere else but at the Human Rights Commission and at SERI. So God's timing, as usual, was the best. He knew what he was doing. But it also made me much more confident, even in those interviews. It's like that doesn't, what that doesn't, because you're meeting your heroes. But I knew I'd done the work. I knew I'd done the research. I knew I'd done the reading. I knew I'd worked on my interview skills. I knew like I was ready. I was like, nah, it's my time. But I also think in terms of financial growth, social justice as a first job, then you were looking at between 12 and 15K in take every single month. And at the Constitutional Court, it was double that. I would have been taking home 29,000 Rand. Take home every day. Take home every single month. And so if I'd done it the other way around, started at the court and then gone down to social justice, it would have been extremely difficult. So even the income trajectory made better sense that way than it did the other way around. Because if you haven't even done articles and you're going to an NGO and you're like, well, I was earning 30K. What are they supposed to do with that? Like, you're not admitted.
You miscut. Yeah.
So I think it also just worked out finances and growth wise as well. But yeah, when I eventually went there, I was like, okay, this makes sense. It definitely made sense why it happened then and not earlier.
And your proudest moment at Concord, like the day you like looked in the mirror and you were like, yay, yes, girl. Just
definitely. So we heard the case when I was still there, but judgment was handed down after I left. But it was definitely the legalization of cannabis. Because that judgment came from my chamber. It was written by the now Chief Justice, who was my judge at the time. I was really proud of that moment. I was proud of what it meant for the people in the room. Because, like the narrative around it had been so narrow. It's just drug or, a drug in the recreational get high sense. But there were people who had been living with chronic pain and it helped them, There were people who really needed it for their religious reasons and it helped them. There were Black people, indigenous peoples, your Khoi and your San peoples who said our inability to access this herb legally for all of these years when it was for centuries a part of our culture and religious practice has been really harmful. And so when the judgment was handed down, people started crying, in court. And I didn't realize the gravity of what we were doing at the time. But to see those people and to see Prince finally be able to get admit, boy.
Does Prince know there by case law?
Oh, no, he knew. He knew. He actually argued his entire case by himself.
Yeah.
He was barefoot, wearing his Rastafari robes. He was to this day, one of the most eloquent, calm, lucid people I have ever heard making legal argument. He didn't or her or look at notes. Nothing. And mind you, if you're at the court, you've heard Badlenda, you've heard Toby, you've heard Ngalwana, you've heard Ntsebeza, you've heard Maneche.
You've heard the greatest.
He opened his mouth, and I was just like, oh, Debel. He didn't look at notes once. He knew.
It's you.
At some point, I just stopped writing. I just put the pencil down. I was just like, it was so bad. It was so... look, the restructures argument, everything. If you can watch Prince's argument, please do that. But we made history that day, and we did it for people who deserved it and who had been fighting for it for years, and it felt good to have been at the center of that. So that by far, proudest moment at the court. Proudest moment at the court. Proudest moment. So that
I absolutely love it. Now I've misplaced your bio. And what happened after Concord? Is it what you're currently doing now? Still a researcher?
4.5 years. So I was at state capture. So I left the court for about 6 months, just to take a break, and to debrief. I spent about 4 months working in the gender equity office at Wits University, which is the office that deals with all incidents of gender-based harm affecting any member of the Wits community or perpetrated by any member of the Wits community. So we did that for about 4 months. And then at the end of December, there was a vacancy for researcher at the State Capture Commission, which had just started hearings in August of that year. And they really did capacity. And the CJ wanted somebody that he had worked with before, that he was familiar with, and who understood him, because the work really needed to get running. And so I sent in my CV, went in for an interview again. And yeah, I think 2-3 days later, or 2 or 3 weeks later, actually, I was swearing in my first witness.
Sure.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth.
Everything you said, I'm just like, whenever people are like exhausted from like 9 to 5, you're like, what is that? I've
never known it.
You don't know what that is.
I've never known that.
Like
ever, no, ever. I've never known that. I know what people are talking about. They're like, oh no. I'm like,
also, when I'm in Beyonce, for the same number of hours. You have 25 hours.
Beyonce has a hairdresser in her house, a tailor in her backyard, a driver. She doesn't buy her own groceries. She doesn't cook her own food. She doesn't buy her own electricity.
Laundry.
She doesn't make appointments. She calls the nail tech, and the nail tech is like, bye, Tebelo, I have to go, one pizza. That is not the same. She doesn't book flights. She tells the pilot she wants to go to Mogadishu, I don't know, in 2 minutes.
Doesn't have to pick her own outfits.
Doesn't have to pack.
Right. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, no.
We do not have the same 24 hours, guys. We're just doing. If you had Beyonce's 24 hours, you would also be Beyonce.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be sending your own emails.
Second time you've dropped mic on me now. Oh,
yeah, no, sure. If you wouldn't be like, hi, Zwonaka, it's Tebelo from Sisters-in-Law. There was an intern somewhere doing that thing for you. We don't have the same 24 hours.
Please, I received this intern for me that you have now put into my universe. I receive. Yo,
Catch
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Sure. Highlights quickly. In the 5-ish minutes we have left, highlights are state capture, and anything that you'd love to just share with us in closing that I haven't asked you, but that you believe that this is a great platform to share with.
The fat cakes recipe at the State Capture Commission was the best. Was very intimate. Okay, it wasn't the best, and it's not funny because like it's actually very serious, but that was lit. I enjoyed that testimony. Meeting all of the witnesses. I met Trevor Manuel. I met Katlanene. I met, and not only, and those were great people, but I also met the incredible whistleblowers who had worked so hard and who had stood up to corruption for all those years. You know, your Dr. Masimba Dawa, your Cynthia Stimple, all of those people who lost their jobs, who were threatened, but who stood up to corruption and against corruption in these SOEs. So that was an incredible honor as well. Best day ever was delivering the report because I hadn't slept in 2 weeks. So I was very happy. And I remember we had McDonald's in Pretoria on the way back from the union buildings. And it was the best McDonald's of my life.
I'm going to need them to like give you your coins for this endorsement. Thank you.
The honestly, they owe me. It was before I found out they're supporting, you know, they have questionable politics. But yeah, definitely at the time, best McDonald's.
Sure.
And then I went home and I slept for 2 days. That was
you've been working hard.
No, listen, it's been enough, eh? I'm ready for my Nara Smith phase where I'm ready.
Bubble gum, please.
From scratch. Oh, Bunny.
They said, Nara, can you make us electricity?
Because at this point, she might be able to do it. Girl, can you make I don't know. I believe she can fly.
Y'all on the internet, y'all are unhinged on the internet. Like,
and
okay,
it's always South African. It's
Nara,
always
please make me a man.
African.
Can you make me electricity? Nara, please make me a car. I've got a battery. Yo, guys.
But that girl has a model husband who cooks, makes moisturizer from scratch, washes the babies. Listen, asking her to make you a man is not a bad idea because
you know,
hey,
yeah, sure. Woo.
But yes, that's me in a nutshell.
Final pearls of wisdom for a young listener, or a young professional, or anything else that I haven't asked that I mentioned. This might be a great platform for you to share with us. Any final words before I let
Please
you
work
go?
hard. Please work really hard at school. It's really important. A lot of the initial years of my career were an uphill battle because my marks were crap. Don't be like me. Work really hard. Pray about everything. God will take you much further than you can possibly imagine. Oprah once said that God is able to dream a bigger dream for you than you're able to dream for yourself. And the ideal is to live within God's dream for you. And that is what you want to happen.
I remember that. So
you must pray about everything. Please be a person of ethics and integrity. Please be a trustworthy person. Do not flap your mouth on social media. Don't have an opinion about everything. Not everyone needs to know all your thoughts all the time. Your employers, prospective and otherwise, have access to those things. And yeah, man, good luck. You deserve every single opportunity you are extended. You deserve to be in the room. You have worked incredibly hard for it against crazy systemic and structural odds. And you deserve it just as much as everybody else. Be proud, work hard, do your very best every single day. I know that you gave it everything. And if you are neurodivergent like me, you should probably be on your medication. But otherwise,
yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I know I said please give advice for the young professionals, but thanks. I've taken a lot of those myself. Thank you for them, James.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. I've been following you for quite some time, and I really do feel like you've just always been so authentic with everything that you share with us on social media and authentic about your life. We also have snippets into your family life, into your siblings. So thank you for just being the best version of yourself and for sharing that version with us. I absolutely love you. It feels like I've known you in real life.
That time, Azam.
And that's the kind of and that's the kind of genuineness and authenticity you've shared with us. So thank you so much, Zwonaka, for who you are, and thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Anytime. And also thank you very much to you too for making the law so simple and so accessible for everybody and demystifying it and making it less complex and making it more accessible. You are improving access to justice. I hope and grows your work according to his will, according to his dream for you, and it gives you more capacity, more time, more money, more
Interns,
rest.
money, everything, more of. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I have to let
Thank
you
you,
go.
Deb.
Mwah, 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 mwah.
Bye-bye.